All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and continue our ecology notes, and we're going to go ahead and look at what is a producer and how does it get energy to survive. So first thing first, when we look at organisms and how they interact with their environment, we look at why do they need to interact with their environment, and realistically, we're looking at the idea that they need energy. Every single living organism needs energy in order to survive. So in order for them to do that, to get that energy, they're going to have to interact with their environment to obtain that energy and to be able to survive. Now, without energy, okay, why it is so important. Without energy, they could not live, okay? Any living organism requires energy to do everything they need to do to just be able to live and beyond that. So they absolutely have to get energy to go ahead and continue living. Now, things that we're going to need that energy for, first thing is respiration. Okay, us being able to breathe, get oxygen into our blood, get oxygen into our bodies. Okay, we absolutely need energy to do that. If you think about just breathing, okay, how many muscles need to move, and how much energy is going to be needed for our bodies to be able to do that. Okay, movement in general. Okay, movement just to be able to hunt and get food. Okay, for living organisms, movement to go ahead and be able to break that food down. Even chewing your food, every time you eat, chewing your food, that requires energy. Okay, movement, walking around, moving, even things like your heart beating, that's a muscle moving, and that requires energy. Okay, breaking down your food. Okay, so we need to go ahead and once we consume that food, it has to get broken down so that we can go ahead and get the nutrients that are within that food as well as the energy. And that also takes energy. So it takes a little energy to get more energy from our food. So all of these things that are going to keep us living require the use of energy. And in order to go ahead and get the energy to do these things, we have to interact with our environment. All right, now in this lecture, we're going to go ahead and focus on one type of organism and how they obtain their energy. So this type of organism is one that is going to be using light, okay, using the energy from light or certain chemical reactions to create their own food, okay? And these organisms we call autotrophs, or sometimes we commonly refer to them as producers. Okay, they are the ones that are going to be making energy, okay, making food that then they can go ahead and hold and use later for energy when they need it, or where other organisms might go ahead and consume them to get that energy. Okay, so autotrophs or producers are those that are going to use the energy from sunlight and they're going to go ahead and make their own food, their own energy. Okay, so I always think like they are a producer. They produce their own food. Okay, all on their own with the help of the sunlight. Okay, so autotrophs, producers, they mean the same thing. You'll hear them interchangeably. Now, how they do that, they're going to go ahead and do that through a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is where we are going to have producers using energy from the sun to go ahead and produce high energy sugars. Okay, sugars are the same things as carbohydrates. And sugars and carbohydrates hold a lot of energy within them. So whenever we need them later, our bodies can break them down and release all of that energy so that our cells can do the things that they need to do. So producers are going to create a lot of high energy sugars when they are doing photosynthesis. And those high energy sugars then become their food that they can go ahead and break down later when they need that energy. Okay. Carbohydrates have a lot of energy, and that's why you'll sometimes hear like athletes talk about how they have to carb load before an event or before a game, because those carbohydrates that they're eating can be stored as energy, and then later as they need it, when it's broken down, that energy can be used. Okay. Now, these high energy sugars that the producers are creating, they're going to get stored within the plant, and then they can be used later as food and broken down for that stored energy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look a little bit more as how photosynthesis occurs. Okay, first thing is to look at where it's happening in our producers or in our plants. So the process is going to happen in a structure called a chloroplast. And the chloroplasts are found within every single plant cell. Okay, so every single plant cell that there is in that organism, there are going to be chloroplasts. And this is what a chloroplast looks like. Okay, just kind of a simple drawing of one. Okay, it's kind of like a disc-shaped structure, and then inside it, it has like these little towers, and this is where all of photosynthesis is going to be occurring. Okay, if we look over here, this is a really good picture. This is under a microscope, and all these kind of elongated rectangles, these are all different plant cells. And then within them, if you see all these little green discs, these are all chloroplasts. So within every single cell, there's probably hundreds of chloroplasts. And within every living producer, there's thousands, millions, maybe billions of plant cells. So lots and lots and lots of plant cells, lots and lots of chloroplasts, which is allowing so much photosynthesis to occur and allowing those producers to make a lot of sugars and a lot of energy. Now, when we look at photosynthesis, we have a chemical equation that kind of breaks down how this process is occurring for our producers. So whenever we look at a chemical reaction, there's two parts. There's the part that comes before the arrow, and these are always called our reactants. Reactants are the things that is needed for the chemical reaction to occur. Okay, so plants need to have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, CO2, and they need to have 6 molecules of water, H2O. Okay, and then they also obviously need the energy from the sun. And with all of that, then photosynthesis can occur. Okay, and when you look at a chemical equation, you'll always see that arrow. And then that arrow is pointing to what gets made after that chemical reaction happens. So this side of the arrow, these things are referred to as the products, what ends up getting made after the chemical reaction occurs. Okay, so in photosynthesis, what our plants are then making is they make 1 molecule of glucose, which is C6H12O6. This glucose is that sugar or that carbohydrate that can now be stored as energy for later use by the plant. And we are also making then 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so when we break that down in photosynthesis, again, we have the beginning part, the reactants, what plants need for this to happen. So they need carbon dioxide and they need water. With the help of the sunlight, then we can have photosynthesis take place and have this chemical reaction occur to go ahead and make glucose and oxygen. And these are our products. Okay, what is getting made after the reaction occurs. So if we go ahead and we look at kind of a nice visual breakdown, okay, if we have our producer, our plant, we have our sunlight coming in, we have our 2 reactants coming in. So we have our carbon dioxide and we have our water going into the plant. Okay, so these 2 things, these are our reactants, those are coming into the plant. And then once photosynthesis is done, we have our 2 products. Okay, we have the 2 items that are going to get made after the chemical reaction. So we have our carbohydrates, our glucose, and we have our oxygen. Okay, so we have our products getting made. Now, to go ahead and break things down even a little bit further. So if we look at photosynthesis and we look at the reactants in our equation, so we have our CO2, our carbon dioxide. Okay, we need to look at where do the plants get this from? So plants are getting the CO2 from the atmosphere. Okay, and where it's coming from in the atmosphere is from us and other consumers. Okay, the plants are getting that CO2 from us and other consumers because every time we breathe out, we are releasing CO2. So it goes into the atmosphere, the plants can take it in. Now, that CO2 is going to be used to help make our glucose molecule. So if you look at CO2, it has carbon, it has oxygen, and if we look at glucose, we have carbon and we have oxygen. Okay, so this is all going to go ahead and get broken down and rearranged to make this new glucose molecule during that chemical reaction. Now, our other reactant is water, H2O. Okay, where plants are getting it from, they're going to be getting it from their root system, from the groundwater. They're going to be pulling it in through their roots up to the plant for the plants to use. Okay, now this water is going to be used to make two things. It's going to get broken apart and it's going to be used to help produce glucose. Okay, you'll see hydrogens there. And it's going to be helping make the other product, which is just oxygen. Okay, so this H2O is going to get split apart. The oxygens are going to be made here, and this hydrogen is going to come over here and help make that glucose molecule. Okay, now as far as our sun goes, the plants are going to use the solar energy that comes from the sun, and it's going to be used to help drive that chemical reaction of photosynthesis to go ahead and help make our two products, our glucose and our oxygen. So when we look at our glucose molecule, C6H12O6, again, that is this high energy sugar or this carbohydrate, okay, that can then be stored in the plant and later broken down for energy for the plant to use for all of those things that plants need to do to consider and continue living, okay? Now, oxygen, when we look at oxygen, okay, our other product, that is actually something that the plants are going to go ahead and release into the atmosphere. So they're going to go ahead and let go of this oxygen that is made. They don't need it. So they're going to release it out of their leaves. It's going to go into the atmosphere. And then we are able to go ahead and breathe it in. Other consumers are able to breathe it in as well. Okay, so that oxygen, that's kind of a byproduct. It's not an immediate product that the plants need. So they just go ahead and release it back into the atmosphere so that we can go ahead and take it in. Okay, so they produce oxygen for us. Okay, we need that. And then we and other consumers are producing the carbon dioxide that they need to go ahead and be able to do photosynthesis. Okay, so we're very reliant on each other in this process, and we'll talk about this even later in your next set of notes. All right, guys, so that kind of breaks down our energy needs, what producers are, how they get their energy through the process of photosynthesis. And as always, if you have any questions, make sure you ask in class and we'll do some follow-up activities to reinforce this information. All right, guys, have a good day and we will talk later.